Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think this is going to be a fun class to follow up on our first class about design positioning. I know it'll take a moment for everybody to join, but we're going to start by going and doing something simple like we did the first time, and then we're going to get into much more complicated things. So as I'm starting, we're going to look at a project that I did a while ago, and this is a hexagon table runner, and I use the Inspire Inselbright, Interform to line it with. So it's kind of stiff. Now this is a perfect thing to use the metal hoop for. If you wanted to go and quilt it, then you can do it in the different ways, right? I've got a mark in one of these just in the center, and I'm going to show you a simple way of using design positioning that we did not cover last time because there's only so much you can fit in an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my machine screen, and I'll pull up a design. I pulled up a simple one because there's a couple of things that I really want you to see. And sometimes if the design's too busy, you won't necessarily get to see that. So I'm going to flip over to my machine screen, and here is the design that I'm working with. Just a very simple design, nothing very busy at all. Now I've selected it, the 240 by 150 metal hoop, because that's what I'm using right now. And you'll notice that I don't have the stabilizer there. This Interform is so nice and so firm that I can do it without having any stabilizer or anything in there. So what I'm going to do is press go, and I'm going to press continue, and I'm going to put the hoop on. And now I'm going to go to design positioning. So design positioning is down at the bottom, right where the flower is. And you'll notice the red crosshair is not in the center of that design. That's very typical of designs these days. That red crosshair represents the very first stitch. So the last class that we did, we were using 1 and 2. This time we're going to do something a little bit different. Right above the number 1, if you go up to the icons that are on this row, if you touch that, you will see that here you have options to see where the center of a design is or where the outside corners of a design are. I want to see the center of that design. So what I'm going to do is touch number 1, and then I'm going to touch the center. And what that did is it moved that crosshair to the very center of the design. And now when I go to number 2, my needle and my hoop will move to that point, that crosshair that you see. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to switch over my camera now so you can see the view of my hoop. Now in my hoop, you'll see that I have this edge right here. That's a hexagon, and I have a dot that's marked right here. And I'll zoom in so you can see that a lot better. Okay, so there's my dot. Now my goal is to move that design to that place. So what I'm going to do is on my screen, I'm going to move the design up. Now I can click and drag it and hold it, which is what I'm going to do. And then if I need to, I can stop and use the arrows at the bottom to fine tune it. Well, that's pretty good. I'm just going to move it over a little bit. So what that's done is centered that design where I want it to be. There we go. My needle is exactly where that dot is. Now, if I did want to see where the outside corners were of that design, I can do that by going back to my computer screen and touching 1 and then going to select the different corners. But right now, there's no reason to do that. This is pretty perfect. So all I have to do is press the start button and it'll stitch it out. Now, is the first stitch going to start there? No, because there is no stitch there. When I touch the check mark to move out, the needle moves to where the very first stitch is. And then when I press the start button, it will go. Now there's only 200 stitches in this, so I'm going to let it stitch, and then I'm going to come back to the camera so that I can show you some samples of other designs that I've used. It stopped for the cut because I have that turned off. So that turned out pretty good. Obviously, it was an easy design and it's going to stitch out quickly. But the whole idea of knowing where the center of a design is, if you have a square or something, an odd shape like a hexagon, if you know where the center of the design is and you know where the center of that shape is, then really it's pretty simple. But the first stitch doesn't end up always being in the very first. It doesn't end up being in the center of the design. So by going into design positioning and choosing the option to see where the center of the design is, that's a quick way of being able to stitch out a design without having to do a lot of going back and forth with that. Now, I've got a few other things that I've brought over here. We did have this belt. Last time I showed you the belt. Well, I finished the belt. You can kind of see the only thing I have left to do with the belt is to put the little grommet in the ends. And if I was using it for a belt, I would put multiple grommets so that it would stay. I'm going to be using this for a bag handle. And so I'm going to put a larger grommet in and then tie it into the bag that I'm making. So, but I did think it turned out pretty good. And that was something that I think sometimes when we start playing with things, we're not sure what they're going to turn out like. That turned out pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. So another reason why you would use design positioning is when you are using the Majestic Hoop. So by far the majority of our embroidery machines can use the endless hoop. The topazes and the rubies cannot, but the diamonds and Sapphire 85Q and the epics, they all can use it. And it is nice, but it's a turnable hoop. So you would do one side first, you do the right side first, and then you would be prompted to turn the hoop. And when you turn the hoop, there's going to be a marker stitch that it will go to, and then you're expected to go to design positioning to be able to check to make sure that everything lined up. Now, some people are wondering why it wouldn't line up, and there's a lot of variables. One of them is when you are putting your fabric in the hoop, you have your screws at the bottom and at the top. So if you do not tighten those screws very tight, then the designs are farther apart, one on each side, and there's usually a little bit of a space, and that's pretty typical from the design on the left and the design on the right. And that's because we don't tighten the hoop as tight as it can go. The other thing that can happen is maybe you have the bottom hoop screw tighter than the top, which can kind of put these things at an angle, and so that they're not exactly straight. I always use design positioning when I'm using the metal hoop. This is a design that it's kind of fun. It's got some yarn couching on that you could use with a yarn couching foot. It's got some three-dimensional flowers. This is a work in progress that I'm going to work on, and I have no idea what it's going to turn out like. So I left it hooped, but I have already taken it out of the hoop once and put it back in. And because I used design positioning, it was really easy to get it back to where I wanted it to be. So if you have the Majestic Hoop and you have designs that fit in there, then that is a good reason to use the Majestic Hoop and design positioning. And I've got a few other ones that I've been talking about in the past. This is a design that I absolutely love this design. And it's really underrated. When you look at this design in the library, it's from a collection, but you can find it in the library. You can buy it as an individual design, or if you have the subscription, then you can get it from there. So I'm going to switch over to my computer, and I'm going to, I'll show you the design and how I decided how it went together. So you'll notice I've just got all of these triangles floating around here. So when I was looking at this design, I was trying to figure out what I could make with it. So in my software, and if you don't have software, you can go onto your computer screen if you have a large enough screen to do that with. But honestly, there is a free version of the My Sewnet embroidery, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to download it. The free version will let you do everything I'm doing here, being able to move designs around. And so what I did was just move designs kind of into place to see what it would look like if I put more of them together. And I decided to leave a little bit of a space in between. And you can see I've just, they were flipped and rotated, and I kind of played around like that. And then I will always try and fill my biggest hoop and get as many designs in there as I can. So when you see the designs that I have here, my idea is I don't want to do one design. I want to do as many designs as would fit in that hoop. So in one hooping, if you have the Epic or Epic 2 or Ruby 90, then you can do all of these because that will fit in the 360 by 260 hoop. If you have a Topaz, well, then you might put fewer of them in the hoop. But do you really want to do them one at a time? So I always look for an opportunity to try and press as many as possible into the same hoop as I can. And it also helps me to be, before I go over to my machine and I'm using design positioning to keep going and stitching on one piece of fabric, it helps me to understand how the design is made if I can see what it looks like and how it's going to sew out. And there are, there's fabulous embroidery designs out there, lots of different companies. A lot of them have tile designs that are meant to go together, but most of them, they do not use the features like we have on our machines with design positioning. They'll sew them out on separate pieces of fabric, and then they'll sew them together, but it never looks as nice. So if you find a design to play with, like this one is a great example, what it does is it gives you all the tools you need to do a larger tile design all on one piece of fabric. And it gives you the confidence. So I suggest starting small with quilt designs. And then as you're going, you can go into more and more difficult things. I have some things behind me, but before I'll do that, here's a little table runner that I did out of some linen. Now this was one half of the hoop, and I used design positioning to make sure that they joined in the right place. And I use design positioning almost every single time I'm embroidering. It isn't something you only want to use once in a blue moon when you're doing a really difficult project. For me, it's something that almost every single time I turn my embroidery machine on, I'm using design positioning. And that's how I've gotten good at it. It was because that I practiced, and at the time I didn't think of it as practicing. I just thought, okay, well, this would be helpful, so I would do it, and then I would come back the next day, and it began to be that I looked for opportunities to use design positioning because I could see the quality of my embroidery, and the prospective projects that I could do are so much more. One day I'll show you some of the tile designs that I've done, but here's another little project that was done. This is pumpkin designs. And they're adorable. They're in the library. And this was just an endless design that using design positioning really helped to create that. This was actually done by Linda Holmes, a friend of mine, and she gave it to me, so which I'm really adore that. It's really pretty. Now, what we're going to do today, we're going to start with something a little bit more complicated. This is the whole cloth quilt. And if you haven't seen that design, you can find it in the library, or maybe you have the CD because it was available to buy separate. And right now, what you're seeing is two designs. This is one design, and then this is the second design up there at the top. So again, I always evaluate how many designs that I can fit into the hoop. If I have a design that one of them will fit into this size hoop, but it's really tight, I might consider going up to the next size hoop if I know that I'm going to be doing a continuous embroidery like this, because I want to have a little bit of space as I go from moving from one block to another, that I can move the design in the hoop. If you've ever had an experience with the Majestic Hoop where you've created a design that filled the whole hoop, and then when you went to turn it, you needed to move the design, but you couldn't move it because the design filled the whole space. Well, that's the problem that you'll run into when you're working with a design that fills the hoop size. So my goal usually is to try, and if whatever the size the design is, if the design here is 6 inches, well, I've got lots of room to move it up and down and side to side, then that works perfect. But if the design fills hoop, then I'm going to choose something bigger. You might wonder why I am hooping my fabric when it comes to this quilt sandwich. And I think it is important to understand the difference between a metal hoop, an endless hoop, and when you're actually hooping your fabric like this. Many of you are floating your fabric, which is great for most things. And when you float your fabric, if you're using stabilizer, it's going to sit in the hoop and you're going to do your design. And it really doesn't matter too much if the fabric moves in or out a little bit. And if you have a little bit of puckering, you usually can get it out with ironing and stuff like that. But when you're doing a design that you're doing multiple designs on the same piece of fabric, it is more of a challenge if you're using the endless hoop, because what you're doing, let me just get an endless hoop here. All right. So what you're doing is you are covering up the hoop, and you don't necessarily know where the inside edge of that metal is, and you don't necessarily know whether you've got the fabric in there straight or not, right? It could be twisted a little bit and you wouldn't know. And when you stitch it out, especially if it's a dense design, the fabric will move in. So I have a way of controlling that when I am working with my fabric being hooped like this. What I do, the very first thing, I have a large piece of fabric here. Okay, this is, I think it's 60 inches by 45 inches. I could have just done a small square, but I really wanted to show you what the real experience would be working with this. I'm at the point where I'm going to unhoop it and rehoop it to do another design. The black line that you see here is a wash away pen. I've got a wash away pen line like this. That line is the center of my fabric. So when I hooped it, the first design is right down the center of that line. So I couldn't have the center of it in the middle because I needed to be able to stitch that out. There's a question about what do I use for marking fabric that can easily be removed. I tend to use a wash away blue pen is my go-to marker because it'll stay until I'm ready to go. The only time I do something different is when I'm using black fabric, like on this one here that I'm doing. This is a design. You can see that there's still white marks on here. This was something I started years ago, and I am going to get it finished. But that's a white chalk that if I iron it, it will go away when I iron it. There is Pounce. If any of you have ever had the little choco liners, what I do is I take the chalk that comes in the choco liner away, and I fill it with Pounce. Pounce is a powder that they use doing free motion quilting, and you can mark your quilt with it, and then when you iron it, it disappears. There are also pencils and white, it's almost like a wax type of crayon that will work exactly the same way. So if you're on a dark fabric, you do need to, it's so impressive to me that this has traveled. I've done all kinds of crazy things with it, and that mark is still there for me to see. But when I'm on a light color fabric, I will use the blue wash away marker. I never use the purple one. The purple one goes away with air. And half the time, by the time I'm working on a project and I hoop and unhoop it, those lines have disappeared. Now, the one thing that I wanted to tell you before I unhoop this is, before I did this embroidery design, what I did was I took that blue wash away pen and I drew the line all the way around all 4 sides of my hoop. Now, you might think that that's a lot, but the biggest challenge when you're doing a continuous embroidery design on a very large piece of fabric is you tend to very gradually start to not be straight. By drawing this line here, what you're going to do, somebody asked a question about what is that powder that I called. Pounce is a powder that you can get in most quilt stores. And they use it, they put it on in a little brush, and they use it for marking quilt templates. But there is other ways of getting it too. But what it is it's a powder that's removed with an iron, so it'll stay until you iron it away. So I'm going to undo this here. Now, I know many of you are not quilters, but I want you to realize that this technique is not just for quilters. I used a quilt design because you could see it clearly, and you can see that it's going to, where I'm lining things up, it will be easier for you to see. But when I started doing this, that's how I started doing it. I started doing a design that was a quilt design just to test it, right? This was my very first time that I did it. And I just found a piece of fabric that I had laying around, and I did that design. That same design is on this pillow. So this was the second design that I did using design positioning. And I just was so floored by how beautiful it was. So this is an 8-inch block. So if I was using my 360 by 260 hoop, this is an 8-inch hoop. So I wouldn't have a lot of room to move it side to side, but I have room to move it up and down. That's now that I have an Epic that's got the 10-inch wide hoop, I would have done something like that with this one on the 10-inch wide hoop, because then I'd have lots of room to move the design as I'm going. So if you, depending upon the hoops you have, if you have a Topaz 50, you're going to have a hoop that is the 8 inches wide by 14. And as long as the design's in there and you can move it up and down a little bit, well, that's going to be giving you enough room to be able to do that kind of thing. And this is a design that pretty much can be done on the Topaz 50 and all of the machines up above it. It's called Moroccan tile. So I'm going to undo this hoop, and I'm going to show you the lines. And what is so valuable about this is when you are, hold on a second here, I just have a little bit of a challenge. Okay, now there's the lines. And I think you can see them right there, the blue lines. They're on green fabric, so they don't stand out very, very strong. But those are the lines that I drew. And I drew them before I did the embroidery, because it's a good indication when you do your embroidery, if after you started the embroidery, those lines that you drew are not on the edge of your fabric anymore, but they moved in, well, then you know that you're going to have to tighten that screw a little bit more, because probably you didn't tighten the screw, because the fabric shouldn't move when it's in the hoop. And that's the big difference from basting or floating your fabric in the hoop, where you lay it on a piece of stabilizer and you just lay the fabric on top. The fabric moves in a lot more. But if it's in the hoop, it won't do that. And you're going to get better results for doing a whole cloth quilt or a large embroidery design that you need to move from place to place. So now what I would do is I would take my ruler, and the lines that are vertical and horizontal, I would just extend them out throughout all the fabric, up and down and side to side. Because now when I go to rehoop, I want to move this area over here. I see the line that's here and here. I'm going to know that I want to see that line when I go and hoop it again, right? I've got that line right here. So this is going to come into place here. And the other side, this is not the most elegant display. But so I won't be accidentally doing it crooked. It's going to be right on the money, because I'll be able to use the line that I've extended out to know that I've got that hoop straight. And that is the biggest challenge when you're doing something like this. So I am going to hoop it. Let me just get this here. Let me see if I can move my camera so I can show you what I'm doing. All right, I'm going to just move my camera over here and change my, let's see here. I think this is going to give me the most open area. Right now, I know you can't see anything. Let me just see if I can move it back. Hold on a second, right? So there's the center. When I'm hooping this, I need to see a little bit of the design that I just stitched in the hoop. Go down here, right? I can't go over here and not have any of the stitched area in my hoop, because how am I going to connect it? And the more space I have in the hoop, the easier this is going to be. Now, I already know where the center is, so I certainly can use the marker in my center here to be able to do it. And I like to try and leave about 1/2 of an inch showing. Now, up at the top, this is kind of interesting. You might think that putting this in the center here would work, but it's really not, because you can see at the top, I don't have enough room. So that I have to move this up like this. And what you should be looking at, really the only thing you should be looking at, is the marked line that I have right here, that drawn line that I drew. See if you can see here. All right, there's the line. So when I put it in here, I'm going to line that up so it's right on that continuous line, like that. And then I'm going to put my hoop underneath and get it hooped. Let me see, did I zoom in here? No, it's the other way. Let's see if I can zoom out and see there. That's better. All right. Now, this is your pretension. If you're hooping multiple layers like a quilt, you do need to loosen the screw. And if you haven't loosened the screw enough, it's going to be hard to get it in place. I chose a green fabric for underneath. That's a print, because for me, that works a lot better to have a print on the back, because then nobody is, agonizing about what every little stitch looks like. So you can see I'm just trying to get it in, and I'm moving it over, and I'm going to keep a little bit of that last stitch line inside. Let me get it in here. All right, I'm almost there. Now, the other thing I'm going to look for is where the bottom line is too. And let me just see here. This is not so easy to do on TV. Sorry, it's taken me a little bit longer here. So I start in the back like that, okay? Now, the reason why I think it's really important to be using the hoop instead of floating your fabric is, once you get your fabric in the hoop, then you can tighten it up to make sure that it's snug. And if you've marked those lines in the hoop, and I've left this down here for you so you can see the line here. If you have a line that's going across and you have lines on the side, you can kind of tell whether you've pulled it the same amount the first time as the second time. Now I've got it in. I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit, and we're going to go over to our machine. Okay. All right. So let me just, I want to just come back to this question. So when we were talking about the Majestic Hoop, there was a question about if you're going to, when you turn your hoop, that you need to move it, and then you get a message that you can't move the design anymore because it's gone past the center of the hoop. And that part of that is because your design is filling the hoop and there's not enough room for it to move past that center mark. And in that case, what I would do, if the quickest way to do it, if you know how to use design positioning, is just loosen the screw at the top and the bottom and shift the fabric over left or right, and that'll totally get rid of that problem. Because that is something that you've got when you're choosing your design, especially when you're making your own designs, that you can get those messages and nothing will help you. If the design is filling the hoop and you cannot move it anymore to the right, that won't help. Now, then there was another question about using design positioning on a ball cap. Any suggestions for smashing the hat to get it to cooperate with the magnetic metal hoop? Well, it depends what kind of hat it is, but we're going to come back to that. All right. I'll answer the question about the hat in a minute. If I have enough time, I have the hat hoop over here. I'll see if I can find it, but I'm not sure if I'll have enough time. But that would make a really interesting Facebook Live to do baseball caps and things like that and talk about that. So I'll keep that in mind. And we're always looking for ideas. All right. So I'm ready. I've got my fabric rehooped. You can see I've got my design inside here like this. Now, this design is actually, it'll fit a 240 by 150 hoop. So I could have used a metal hoop. And that originally was a picture that was on the metal hoop. But one of the things that's really important when you're doing continuous embroidery on one piece of fabric is whether the fabric, like maybe this time I put it in and I stretched the fabric very little and it's really bouncy and loose. And the next time I might need to treat it the same way, or maybe I need to pull the fabric a little tighter. Well, when you're floating your fabric, you cannot pull it tighter. It's not possible. But in the hoop, I can give it a little bit more of a pull to get something to line up perfectly and tighten up the screw, and it will stay there. And that is really important when you're doing this kind of thing. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going to pull up a design. When we're looking at the design, I'm going to look at it first in the software, because I can, right? So this was the original design. Wait a second. This is one of the original designs. There's the original design. Now, these are not symmetrical pieces, means when they go together, all right, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste this. I want to show you how they go together. All right. So I love, before I go to my machine, I really want to investigate how this goes together. Now on another screen, I've pulled together more pieces so that you can kind of see what it looks like. And as they're going together, when you're looking at this, because this is a larger piece, it would be easier if you could have a bigger hoop, but we don't own a bigger hoop, right? But what we can do is go in and we can go to enter hoop size. And now when we go to enter hoop size, we can make this any size we want. It doesn't have to be a real hoop. So I could make it 500 by 500, because all I'm really trying to do is get an idea of how these designs go together. So now I can move this design over and see how they connect. Right there, this flower is connecting. So I know that's going to be an important point where they need to join. And this one is going to come over here and join over here. And I'm going to copy and paste this one. So if you spend a couple of minutes looking at how these designs fit together, then when you go to join them on your machine, you'll understand better how they work. I started with these two. Let me move this out of the way. All right. The two that I started with are the two that are back together like this. And I fit those two together, and I got rid of the stippling because I wanted to show you something that is different with the stippling. So now I can just select this one and combine the two of them. And now they're one design that can travel on its own. I'll get that away from here. And so because I have a hoop that's big enough, I stitch them both at the same time. If you don't have a hoop that's big enough, then you would do them one at a time. And that just depends upon the machine you have. But the process is exactly the same, whether you have a diamond, a ruby, or a topaz 50, it's all the same. Even the topaz 40, I think, has a 240 by 150 hoop. So, and it has design positioning, basic design positioning. So you could do this with any of those machines because that design, that is really relatively small. But for those of you that do have an Epic, you could fit two designs in your hoop. So why wouldn't you want to do it? That's all it really comes down to. Now we're going to go back to design positioning, and we're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to figure out, because there's a few points, right, that need to line up. I took away the corner marker stitches, so because I didn't want you to rely on them. I wanted you to see how you do this if you have a design that doesn't have the corner marker stitches. And I took away the stippling, so it makes the design a little clearer for you. So we're going to head over to the machine, and I'm going to load that design. I'm going to get rid of my metal hoop. Oh, I guess I should show you this first. This is the original one that I did, right? And you can see the middle design, that little circle in the center. That's what we're working on right now. I have half of that done, and I'm going to do the next half. Now, when you notice, look at my design that you have here, you'll see that it's very flat, right? There's not a lot of poof in there, and that's because of the stippling. And then the embroidery design that goes with the stippling is a triple stitch. So because there is so much quilting on here, you'll get a very flat quilt. And that's, I think, one of the things to consider when you're deciding what designs you're doing. If you would like a quilt that you're going to wear, it's going to be on your bed all the time, and it's going to be like, an edge-to-edge design or something like that, you might want a quilt that's going to be fluffier and puffier than this, and it'll be a little softer. So sometimes you might see something it's completely filled, and you can choose to take out parts of that so that you end up with a lighter, softer quilt. And that's what I chose to do with the green one that I'm working on. Somebody has a question, when you put two together, do you combine them? Yes, I do combine them. And I will also color sort them, because there's no reason not to. And when I come back to my computer afterwards, I'll show you how I deleted the stippling in case anybody's got a question about that. All right, I'm going back to my computer. To my machine. And I'm going to pull up my design. All right, that was my design that I just did. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to delete that design. And I'll go and load the design that I'm going to work on. So this is the design that I need to do. So obviously I need to choose a bigger hoop. Right now I have the 240 by 150 hoop selected. So I'm going to choose the hoop I'm using, which is 360 by 260. Now the design that I've done, that was done exactly the way I stitched it out. I need to mirror image it so that this part of the design is on the other side. So I'm going to mirror image side to side. And I'm not really worrying about where it's showing in the hoop, because I know that I'm going to use design position to move it. So it really doesn't matter. All I need to know is I have room to move that design, which I do. So I'm going to press go. Now, and I'm going to press continue. I have my cutter turned off. And now I'm going to put my hoop into place. And I'm going to put my fabric down here. Let me get it in, and then we're going to switch over. All right, there's my hoop. Now, the needle, the red crosshair, that is where the very first stitch is, which is not going to help me at all, because all I really care is where does it line up with the edge of that design. So I'm going to go to design positioning, which I'm going to find on the very bottom. There's the heart on the very bottom left, and then next to that is the flower. That is design positioning. And when I'm in here, if I wanted to just find the outside corners of where they are, those corner markers are still here. But again, they're not going to help me too much right now. The place that I'm going to choose to move the marker to is the center of that flower. So I'm going to touch number 1, and I'm going to drag that crosshair over here. Now, if I do not zoom in, that point isn't accurate. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see. I need to zoom in on that point. So I have zoom functions here that are perfect. When I touch the first zoom option, it is going to zoom in so close to that stitch that it will show me both sides of a satin stitch if that was a satin stitch. And all I have to do is just touch it. And it moved. Look at how close it moved into that stitch. It is right there. I can see it's not quite perfect, so I can use the arrows here to move it and adjust it. Now, my habit is always the same. I zoom in to make sure that point is correct. Then I zoom back out to the full design. And now when I touch number 2, my eyes are immediately going to go to the hoop because my needle will move to that point on the hoop. So when I touch number 2, my needle, let me zoom in so you can see. Well, boy, I'm pretty close. I didn't expect that. That was a total fluke. All right, let me just lower it down a little bit here so you can get a little bit better view. All right. So right now, my needle is about 1/4 of an inch away. Well, this is much, much easier than I would have expected it to be. So all I have to do is on my screen, and I'll put a little window up so you can kind of see what I'm doing on the screen. On my screen, you can see the red crosshair that's there. I'm going to use these arrows. Now, I could just touch and drag the design, but then I'm going to move it more than I need to. Because I only need to move it a little bit, I'm just going to move it over until it touches the right design. It went too far, so I just move it back. If you keep your finger on, it moves faster, so sometimes you go too far. All right, now I'm going to put my needle down and check to see how accurate it is. There. That's just about perfect. Let me see if I can zoom in. Can you see how perfect that is? Now, that's only telling me that right now that point is good. But I'm probably going to be concerned about some of these other points here and this point right here too. So I'm going to go back to number 1. And I'm going to choose a different point. All right. I'm going to drag that up and I'm going to go all the way to the top. I'm going to zoom in so I can see that point. I'm going to go right there. And with this zoom function right now, I'm zoomed in 725%. There are no machines on the market that you can zoom in to see an exact stitch like this. Our design positioning is so phenomenal because we can zoom in and actually see a needle point where the needle is going in. But if you don't zoom in, you'll never see that. So it's very important to use your zoom functions. So now that I know that that marker is exactly where I want it to be, I'm going to zoom back out. And now I'm going to touch number 2. And my needle moves to that place. Now I'll zoom in so you can see. I have no idea if it's good or not. Now this is going to depend. Wait a second, see if I can get a little less blurry here. There. So when I put my needle down, it is about 1/16 of an inch away from that stitch. And that's exactly where it's supposed to be. Because if you look at the other designs, wait a second here. Do you notice that all these petals, they're not touching each other, right? And so this one shouldn't touch either. It should be a little ways away from that stitch. So I think that's just perfect. Now, if I had tightened this fabric and pulled it really tight, let me see if I can give you a better view here. When I was hooping it, the way that I hooped the first one, if I did something different in the second one, I may find that my needle is above that point, and then that tells me that I pulled my fabric too taut when I was hooping it. And that's when you can control it when it's in the hoop. But if you were floating your fabric, you wouldn't be able to kind of pull it back or stretch it more or less if you need to. being in the hoop right now, if I felt like I needed to stretch the fabric a little bit, because it's in the hoop, I can literally just go in and pull the edge of that, and I can control that. I don't need to because it looks like it's perfect, but I've also had some experience doing this. But maybe I needed this design to be over here a little bit, the needle to be over here or to be back there. Well, because it's in the hoop, I can give it a little pull, right? And I can adjust that. And I can do it for like 1/32 of an inch. Whereas if I was floating the fabric, I would have no ability to do that. So that looks pretty good. But because this is a complicated design, I'm going to go back and let's check one more point. All right. I'm going to go back to number 1. And this time I'm going to choose a design on the lower part of the hoop. I'm going to go to that circle and I'm going to zoom in. Look at, I was nowhere near accurate. And that's, you're kidding yourself when you're doing this. If you don't zoom in, you need that kind of accuracy. All right, there it is. I'm going to zoom back out, which means when I zoom back out, it means now my attention's going to the hoop. If you place the needle down in the fabric, you need to make sure you lifted it out for the other machines. All right, now when I touch number 2, my needle moves over there. And I have the ability to put my needle down. Oh, that's just about perfect. I don't think I can get better than that. Whoops, wrong way. That is really perfect. It's exactly why. Now, where you run into problems, this is ready to stitch, right? So I can say, okay, I'm ready to go. And I'm going to check the check mark on the bottom of the hoop so that I'm ready to go. And then I'm ready to start stitching. Notice how much room I have on the edges, right, of my design. I've got plenty of room to move the design up and down and side to side. But if I'd chosen too small of a hoop and I needed to move the design up or down or sideways, I wouldn't be able to do it. So having that extra hoop size makes a big difference. Now, the design collection that I'm using is called Whole Cloth Quilt. That is this one here. And it's a perfect design to test out your abilities. Because I said before it was like 3,000. It's more stitches than that. But it is something that design will stitch out in less than 10 minutes, right? There's not that many stitches in it because it's a quilt design. So make yourself some pot holders. You can make yourself, maybe it's pockets for a purse or something, and you just want to quilt the fabric. If you don't want a whole cloth quilt and you're not into quilting, then make it into something else afterwards. But the value you learn is so much greater by using design positioning and trying to do something like this. There was a question about the R foot instead of the Q foot. You will always get better quality stitch out with the sensor Q foot over the R foot. And I know you don't want to hear that, but it's true. And there's a reason for it. Now, most people like to put the R foot on because they don't have to take the ankle off. And I can understand that. When you're taking the sensor Q foot off or putting it back on, I would have to say, honestly, there are a lot of people that have been challenged by that, and it's because you're not doing it right. And when you're putting the sensor Q foot on, what you do is you take the ankle off, you've got the foot in place, turn the needle down into the hole of the sensor Q foot, and then the foot goes right into place, and you're not fighting with it. If I get a moment, I'll show you how that works over there. The reason the sensor Q foot works better is the R foot floats. And when the R foot's floating, as your embroidery design is stitching, it's going like this, right? Well, there's a lot less tension on that thread. And so the back is going to look very loose and you're not going to get the same quality stitch out. The sensor Q foot, the way it works is every time the needle goes down, the foot goes down and holds the fabric taut as the stitch is happening. And then when the needle comes up, the foot comes up. And then it's not putting pressure on the fabric, but it's putting pressure on the fabric in the important point. That's when the needle is actually in the fabric taking that stitch. So even on a design, I'm not sure. So Meredith wrote me, somebody asked a question about, correct me if I'm wrong. So even on a design, you duplicate. I'm not sure what that means, Meredith. Maybe you could get more information about that. So you notice this is a design that you can buy in the library. It's called Whole Cloth Quilt. Now, if you have a subscription, you have all the designs, right? But I have a tip for you. If you don't have the subscription, when you're looking at the designs, don't buy all of them. And this is, I think, a legitimate thing to tell you, because the way this is made, right, the way this design is made, the design that you use in the center for this part up here, this is exactly the same design from the center down. The design you're using over here is the same design you're going to use over here and over here and over here. So what you need is one of each. You don't need to buy all of them. What they did in the collection is they gave you every single design, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think there was quite a few designs in there. But because of them being mirror images of themselves, you don't need to buy all of them. You just need to buy the ones that are different from the others. Okay, so I think it may be like 6 designs or something or 7 designs. I'm not sure, but you can tell when you look at them what they look like. And I have the design built on a larger scale. Let me see if I can pull that up. Maybe. So I'm just checking questions. Is there any other questions, Meredith? So I'm going to show you the design. This design here, this very similar, is from the Moroccan tiles. And this is another nice one to do. And again, you'll notice this is not, it is not a symmetrical design, but there's only one design that you would buy here because it's the same. This is one design here, but it's done on a rotating basis. So just like its pillow, this is one design. This corner is what the design looks like. And when you rotate it, you're going to rotate it 90 degrees to do the next one. And each of these is going to get rotated so that it forms this larger design. And when you look at this outside, when you put 4 of these together with another 4, then it forms a secondary pattern, just like the wall hanging that's involved behind me. What I love about these is how beautiful they are. But these are denser. I used a tearaway stabilizer when I was doing this. And I hooped it in the largest hoop that I had. At the time, the largest hoop that I had was the 200 because I had the diamond at the time. And these, it will fit in there because it's an 8-inch square. And it'll fit in a Topaz 50 also. So where you have to be careful is when you're doing a design that's much, much denser, is because I hooped it, I knew how much give there was to the fabric. So I made sure not to pull extra on the fabric. If you use another stabilizer like a no-show mesh or a cutaway, most people think that when you are using a dense design, that you should use a cutaway or a no-show mesh that is acting like a cutaway. I think that is not the right way to go. I'm trying to find a polite way to say this. We all have different ways of doing it, right? There's good ways, there's bad ways, there's ways that work for you that may not work for me. If you're happy with what you're doing, go for it. I find the challenge when I'm using a cutaway is when I'm done and then I want to rehoop and keep moving on to the same fabric, is the cutaway doesn't have any give. So when you hoop it, if you find that the fabric is a certain length, but you need to stretch it out so the design is going to line up properly, there is no give in cutaway. There is no give in no-show mesh. So I always want to make sure that I'm using something that the stabilizer can go away. On a quilt, where I'm doing a quilt like this, the batting has got a lot of give to it. The fabric's got a lot of give to it. I can solve any problem. And when I did this, I used a black tearaway, and then I did one block, and then I tore all the tearaway away. It actually, if you take the fabric and you pull it on the diagonal like this, the tearaway just pops out. Anywhere you're seeing black is not embroidery. That's the fabric. It's a black cotton velvet. So the tearaway was gone. It didn't take me very long to get rid of it. But then when I went to rehoop the next one, that was easy to do, because if I needed to pull the fabric a little more to make the design line up, I was able to do that. And that's the one thing I want to warn you about when it comes to working on a continuous embroidery. The quilt design behind me, that has 36 blocks all on one piece of fabric. And as I was getting to the outside edges, I had pulled the fabric. I really didn't have a lot more room to pull the fabric. And I knew that was my last row. So I said, no problem. I'll just shrink the design one little notch and you'll never notice it. And it's true. You would never notice it. I don't even notice it. But there are different ways of solving it. And if you're on the outside edge of something, it's possible to do that. But if you're in the middle, right at the beginning, you really need to have a way of controlling that kind of thing. So there was a question about the monster quilt behind me. So when I was doing this monster quilt behind me, I used design positioning to make sure I sewed these two pieces of fabric together. They're 6.5 inches, 6.5 inches strips. And then I used design positioning so that I knew his feet would be on here. When I say that I use design positioning every day, I'm not joking. The reason that I can do any of these things is because it is just a normal part of my way of life. When I'm doing anything, whether I'd be on a topaz, a diamond, a ruby, my design positioning is something that gives me the perfection that I'm looking at with very little work. You could see when I lined up that design on the hoop, it didn't take a lot. I didn't have to spend hours doing it. It was because I have practiced it enough and I've done it that it becomes second nature. So look for opportunities where you can go in. And here I did cut off part of this guy's here. And here I made sure that his feet were on there, and I kind of created a couple of little guys. These designs are in the Ruby 90, I believe, and the original Epic and the Epic 2. So if you have those machine designs, you'll if you look under the appliques, you'll find the designs there because they're in the applique designs. And let's see, there was another question about stabilizers. Oh, there was a question about the stretch mesh scarf that I made that I showed on another Facebook Live. I used Aqua Magic for that, for the mesh scarf that I used Madeline and also my jacket. If I want stabilizer to wash away, then I'm going to use Aqua Magic. And that makes a lot of sense. Now, when I'm doing something like this, I really prefer to use Tearaway instead of Aqua Magic, because I don't mind if there's a little bit of stabilizer underneath all the satin stitches and the heavier stitches, because what that does is it allows the fabric to kind of hold its shape, and it allows the design to have a little body beneath it. And then I just get rid of the rest of the tearaway. When I did the flower scarf that I did, I'm not sure if I could put my hands on it really quickly. I think I tucked it away. I did not use no-show mesh because then it would have showed behind. I want it to wash away. I don't want any stabilizer left at all. So that's important to me. If I'm going to do something that's sheer, if I'm going to do something that is going to hold itself together like the Afghan, then I want that stabilizer to be out of there. And Aqua Magic is always my go-to because it's not affected by humidity at all. So I have some more things to show you on design positioning. And I know I've thrown in some different projects here along with it. I'm going to show you the hexagon. I have a couple of the different hexagons. I showed you the other one that I did there. This was another type of hexagon that I did. And I just, in this one's here, I just found the center of it. I could measuring once and measure the other one. I know where the center of it was. And so I just brought designs in. And I used different colors and different designs in there to fill that. And this is another fun, easy project. If you're looking for something that's easy and you want to get comfortable using design positioning, that's the kind of thing that you would do. All right. And let me just check the questions here. Can you use this for a table runner with one piece of material instead of sewing the blocks together? Yes, definitely. Absolutely, you can. And it would be a perfect thing to do. Now, I did have a question about removing the stippling, and I'm going to go back to my computer to show you that, because I think it's important that you, if you want to do that, that you can do it. And then we'll go back to the design positioning on the screen, because we're going to talk about rotating a design, and we're going to talk about using 3 and 4. And then we're also going to, I've got quite a few things left. Let's see. We're out of time. How's that possible? I'm so sorry. How did we? I cannot believe. I'm shocked. It's 4 o'clock already. But let me show you how you can get rid of the stippling, and then we'll call it a day. I hope you've been enjoying this. And let me go back to my screen. I'm going to go back to my computer screen here, and I talk too much. All right, I'm going to go to the screen where I have the stippling. All right, so there's a design. You can see the stippling behind it. Over here on the right, you have the colors. You need to have modify. So if you have the My Sewnet embroidery platinum or gold, if you have the box version, or if you have Premier Plus 2 extra or ultra, you have modify. I'm going to go to modify. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the color I want to keep. So I'm going to keep the first color, and I'm going to keep the last color. I just hid it away. And now all I have left is the stippling. So I can just select everything that's visible, and I'll put a box around it. And then I touch delete or cut, whichever one I want, and it's gone. And now I don't have stippling left. It's really pretty easy when you do that. And I've got more questions coming about when you rehoop or duplicate a design. The shape of the hoop matters in order to position. The most important thing when you're making a decision about what size hoop you're using, in my mind, is always use a hoop that's bigger than the design. You have to be able to move it left or right. You have to be moving up and down. If I had put that fabric into the hoop crooked, then what I would have done is go to number 3 and selected the point where I needed to rotate the design. And then when I touch number 4, the design will rotate. But if you look at everything that I've ever done here, I have never done 3 and 4 to use it for that. I use it for other things. I use it when I've got a line and I want to put my name on it, or I've hooped the fabric crooked and I don't want to unhoop it. But if you're hooping your fabric on a large whole cloth quilt and you draw the lines on the outside of your hoop and extend those lines out, you're always going to hoop it straight on. And then you don't need to use 3 and 4. And it's not that I'm discouraging you to use 3 and 4. What I really think is the most important thing is that you start using design positioning and getting the most out of it, having fun with it and being successful with it. And I heard from the last time that we did the first event that many people used it for the first time and they were amazed at how easy it was, and it gave them the confidence to use it all the time. And that's what I'm looking for. I want you to have confidence to keep going, right? If you start using 3 and you're rotating the design, sometimes you'll just like twist the design completely out of place and you feel like you got to start over again. So I promise I will come back on another time and I'll have a brand new project where we'll only use 3 and 4. But for those of you that have got some experience with design positioning, then by all means go in and play around with 3 and 4. But for me, the important thing when I was learning it was trying to understand a simple, easy way to use it. And that's what led me to do all of these things. And now if I want to, I can use 3 and 4. And I do when I've got a particular reason to do it. But most of the time, 1 and 2 will work. And the Topaz 50, the rubies, the diamonds, the Topaz 50 just has 1 and 2. And the Topaz 40 only has 1 and 2. So I wanted to kind of keep simple with that so that this is something that everybody can do and everybody can use. I'm not sure. I guess we're going to have to say goodbye because we're kind of over time. I hate to say goodbye. I have so much fun, I have to tell you, when I'm on these. And I just love seeing all your comments. I'll come back out. Any question that I didn't answer, I'll come back out. And I know what I should have done. The person who asked about the table runner, I made a whole tablecloth using a design, and I made a design in the center, and then I did all around the outside of the tablecloth like that. And those designs I think are on the library too. I'll try and post a picture of it. I never even thought of pulling it out. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you give it a try. And if you're looking for designs, remember the Moroccan tile has a quilt design and then an embroidery design, and also the whole cloth quilt. They're perfect for trying this because they're relatively simple designs and you get a chance to kind of experiment. But whether you're doing the monsters, whether you're doing the octopus, whatever it is you're doing, design positioning is the thing that's going to make everything easy. So I hope you feel more confident to give it a try. And you all know how to contact me. If you have any personal messages, the questions that I didn't answer, you can get me on Karen Loves to Quilt and Sew on my Facebook page, or I will come on and answer all the questions that we have here. So I want to say goodbye. Thank you very much for joining us. And the time just goes by too fast. I just can't believe it. So I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye, everybody. It's been wonderful. Maybe they're still there. They didn't cut me off. I thought they might just cut me off. Meredith, are we finished?